Notre Dame has its first quarterback battle in a couple of years after Ian Book was the starter for the past 2.5 seasons. In this video, we're going to take a look at the quarterback battle, but before we do, please hit the thumbs up on this video, like and subscribe. We appreciate you guys and what we're trying to do here at blueandgold.com. And it's that time of the year. The 2021 Notre Dame football preview is up for pre-ordering. Make sure you get that in before June 25th, whether you're a member of blueandgold.com, Blue and Gold Illustrated or not. Still get a really good deal on the Notre Dame football preview. 160 pages covering Notre Dame football, opponent previews, recruiting information, and so much more. First up, guys, talk about Drew Pyne back in the 2020 recruiting class. He was a 4-star quarterback for Notre Dame, the number 118 overall player in the country, number 1 player from the state of Connecticut, number 7 pro-style quarterback, had a highly productive career as a prep quarterback, 9,411 yards passing, 105 touchdowns, 35 picks, also added 1,182 rushing yards and 20 scores. 2020 Under Armour All-American, played in 49 games during his high school career, state champion as a freshman in 2016. Going back to that Under Armour All-American note, I thought he was the best quarterback in that game. When he was in 8th grade, guys, offers from Alabama and Nick Saban, Florida State, Jimbo Fisher, strong bloodlines. His football goes very far back in the Pyne family. His grandfather, George Pyne III, played for the Boston Patriots in the AFL. Father, George Pyne IV, held the position of chief operating officer at NASCAR. I always like to note that, it's pretty neat. And then was an all Ivy League football performer in college. So, another thing about Drew is just going back to that note about him earning offers when he was in the 8th grade. He has always been told that, he's either too small or not deserving of these offers and these accolades that he's received over the years. And all he's done is just perform at a high level. And you guys are seeing these clips from spring ball. And yes, this is more of a highlight reel than it is a compilation of every throw that he had in spring. Of course, Notre Dame would only send the media 3 minutes of clips from each practice. So, the Irish athletics team wanted to send us what they wanted us to see. But you see a throw like this. This was probably my favorite throw of the entire spring. Pyne to Keys, that big touchdown pass in a scrimmage setting. But, just looking at his freshman season real quick, his first career game action was against USF in that blowout victory. Completed a pass for 5 yards and also rushed once for 4 yards. Saw some up duty against Pitt and Syracuse, and then in the college football semi-final game against Alabama on January 1st of this year, completed 1 pass for 7 yards. And I remember in that Alabama game, he just looked really small. And, when Book came out, and it was like, wow, Book's not the biggest guy in the world. And Pyne, looked even smaller. But then seeing Pyne in spring ball, seems like he's put on more weight. Seems like he's big enough for this moment. Like he's not, like when you saw him against Alabama, just looked like, wow, like he doesn't really belong here. I thought this spring, and it was just, 3 months after that Alabama game, looked bigger, looked more poised, composed, and really like what I saw from him this spring. So as far as this spring outlook goes, guys, again, you're watching these same clips I am. Very accurate, all around, a really solid quarterback, and I think he's going to have a strong college football career. And here is what Notre Dame head coach Brian Kelly had to say about Pyne this spring. He said, "We want Drew to be the starter. Drew has been in the program, and we want him in the spring to be competing for the starting position. He will have an opportunity to do that and get first-team reps." And of course, guys, Pyne had plenty of first-team reps. Kelly continued, "Drew is built for this. He has always been told he's not good enough, can't be the starter, can't win. He relishes these opportunities. He always has succeeded. This doesn't affect Drew at all. It just motivates him." So the biggest strength for Drew Pyne is his accuracy. I love everything about how he throws the football. I could watch him throw all day long. It's just beautiful, effortless, and again, that accuracy, he's just so good. His mechanics are great, his footwork, everything about his release is beautiful. So again, that accuracy is a big strength of his. Chemistry with Michael Mayer, that's a real thing. They came in the same recruiting class together, both committed to Notre Dame very early. They've been really good friends for at least 2 years. I think chemistry with Michael Mayer, you saw it in those clips, that he's built a strong rapport with the rising sophomore tight end for the Irish. To me, that's a big factor. And then there's an it factor with Drew Pyne. Kind of going back to what Kelly was saying, there's just something about him that he just overcomes all of these things. Whether it's, and we'll go to his weaknesses now. Height, he's 5'11 and a half. Elusiveness, a lot of people want to talk about these shorter quarterbacks. They can make it. Of course they can. Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Kyler Murray. Well, Drew Brees is one of the top 5, top 10 best quarterbacks of all time. So it's tough to, say that Drew Pyne is going to be Drew Brees. And then you look at Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson, they're so darn athletic. Drew Pyne is not that type of athlete. And then he doesn't have the strongest arm to connect on 55, 60-yard bombs. I would say he is more comfortable in that 45 to 50 yard range for his deep ball. But even with those weaknesses, he has that it factor to him. There's just something about him that he can get the job done. He's not super tall, he's not overly athletic, doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but he's got great moxie. I love that accuracy, the leadership, the poise, the experience. Again, guys, 9,411 passing yards in high school and attempted 1,111 passes in high school. 49 games he's played in his high school career. Connecticut's not the toughest football in the world, but he's coming in with a ton of experience and poise to battle for this Notre Dame starting quarterback spot. Next up, we got to talk about Jack Coan, the former Wisconsin quarterback. Back in the 2017 recruiting class, he was a 4-star recruit, nation's number 241 overall player, number 13 pro style recruit, number 2 player in the state of New York. Of course, he was committed to Notre Dame on a lacrosse scholarship before his football recruitment heated up, and Notre Dame did not offer him a scholarship, so he wanted to play for Notre Dame. So when he got that second opportunity to play for Notre Dame and transfer to the Irish, he jumped on it pretty quick. Started 14 games for Wisconsin in the 2019 season, completed 236 of 339 attempts for 2,727 yards with 18 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He also added 4 rushing scores. Coan was not Wisconsin's starting quarterback in 2020 because he suffered a right foot injury during a fall camp practice October 3rd. Now that's kind of weird to say October 3rd fall camp. Remember, Big Ten started late last season, had that shortened season. But Coan had successful foot surgery 4 days later after he sustained that injury. He was available to play in Wisconsin's final 2 games of the 2020 season, but the Wisconsin staff opted to stick with their quarterback of the future, Graham Mertz, to ride out that season, which is smart. But just a couple of days after the season ended, Coan announced on Twitter that he would be taking his talents to Notre Dame. As far as his spring outlook goes, I mean, you guys see him here. He's a really solid football player. We'll talk about his strengths and weaknesses as well, but he's obviously coming in with a ton of experience, knows the game of football well. He's just a solid quarterback. You know what you're going to get with Jack Coan. Now, is this a player who's going to take Notre Dame to a national championship caliber offense? Is he more of a guy to keep Notre Dame kind of right where they're at, on the fringe of college football playoffs every year? I would probably argue the latter, but you just don't know yet until he gets out there and plays this fall, if he is the starter. But again, I watched all of these spring clips that Notre Dame sent to the media, and of course, Notre Dame's going to send us what we want to see. But still, overall, I mean, you guys are watching him here. I thought he had a really strong spring, seemed to command the offense more than I thought, to be honest. He's a new guy. He just got to Notre Dame not very long ago, 2-3 months ago, but he's picked it up. And he seems to have some good chemistry with his receivers as well. Here's what Notre Dame head coach Brian Kelly had to say about Cohn. When you're a starting quarterback, you already have great traits. His work ethic is outstanding. We knew a lot of that about him already. He came in here and has fit extremely well because he has been authentic and been who he is and hasn't tried to pretend. Naturally, leadership will follow in that position, and that is what's happening. And moving to the strengths and weaknesses, arm strength is definitely one. Seems to have no problem firing the ball downfield in those intermediate passes where he needs to fit a ball into tight windows. Doesn't seem to have much problem there. Size is definitely something that's notable. He's 6'3 1/4", 220 pounds, so tall, big dude, and he has big game experience. He's played in a Rose Bowl, plenty of games under his belt there at Wisconsin. He's been through it. He's an older guy, and that's going to help him at Notre Dame. As far as weaknesses goes, yes, he did play lacrosse in high school, but when you watch him run around in these clips that Notre Dame is sending to us from spring ball, it doesn't seem like mobility is a strength of his, like we saw Ian Book with his escapability last season. The upside, now look, this isn't like a major weakness, but like I said, you know what you're going to get with Jack Cohn, at least in my opinion. I don't think he's going to come in and just absolutely wow you and be in the Heisman discussion. I think you know what you're going to get in Jack Cohn. It's a solid quarterback. He's going to have a nice year at Notre Dame if he's the starter, but I don't think there's an incredible amount of upside. And even though I just said a minute ago that he has looked really good this spring in terms of how well he's picked up the offense, there's still an inexperience that he has at Notre Dame. He's just new to this football team. So a weakness to me is his experience in the system. Just doesn't have a ton of it. Doesn't know the personnel extremely well. Still learning his coaches and all those things. So I think that's at least worth noting. Also worth noting, Tyler Buckner. This is still a factor. I would be absolutely stunned if he is the starter for Notre Dame against Florida State. But does he get some time on the field? If there's guys who are struggling and Buckner's the number 3 guy, does he catapult up to the top spot if Notre Dame's struggling and needs a jolt on their offense? Tyler Buckner is still an X factor. What is he? What does his role look like for this season? Does he get redshirted? Does he play in 4 games? Does he play every game? There's just so much on the table, questions that we have about Tyler Buckner that we just don't have answers yet to. We're not going to spend much time on Brendan Clark because, to be honest with you guys, don't know what his outlook is. In his freshman season in 2019, he only played in 2 games, had a 22-yard touchdown pass to Braden Lenzy against New Mexico, and then in 2020 came in once in Notre Dame's win against Pitt and completed a 7-yard pass and also ran the ball once, but then he had surgery on his knee and was out for spring ball. Will he be ready in time for fall camp? Guys, I do not know what the outlook looks like right now for Brendan Clark. So for me, this video is more focused on Drew Pine and Jack Cohn. But of course, Tyler Buckner was worth some mention as well. And the verdict, I'm going Jack Cohn. I think it's safe to say that he will end up being Notre Dame's starting quarterback. I think they brought him in for a reason, partly because you have depth concerns. I have no idea what the role looks like for Brendan Clark on this team. He's another big X factor, but for me, I think it's Jack Cohn and Drew Pine battling, and I'll give the edge to Jack Cohn with that experience, and he's only going to get more comfortable at Notre Dame as we get into fall camp. I think he'll be Notre Dame's starting quarterback against Florida State on September 5th. That's it for this video. What do you think about my takes here? Where am I right? Where am I wrong? Make sure you leave your comments and hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you're not. Again, check out that Notre Dame football preview. Link is in the bio of this video. Appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend.